The birthday cake was still warm when my own daughter stood up, pointed at me across the table, and said it loud enough for every person in that room to hear. "You're only here because you want Dad's money." The room went silent. Forks stopped moving. Everyone stared. She didn't stop there. She called me manipulative, said I had been working the family for years. I tried to respond. She cut me off in front of everyone. And standing there surrounded by relatives I had known for over a decade, I realized someone had been feeding her lies. Carefully, deliberately, for a very long time. My name is Danielle Carter. I'm 36 years old and I work as a hospital administrator. I'm not glamorous or wealthy. What I am is consistent. I spent years balancing long shifts with school pickups, managing household budgets that had no business working the way they did, and covering financial gaps that nobody else wanted to acknowledge. I kept this family afloat during some of its hardest periods. Not for praise, not for recognition, just because someone had to and I was the one willing to do it. What they didn't know was that I had kept records of all of it. If you've ever been judged unfairly by the people who were supposed to know you best, subscribe to this channel. Share in the comments whether you've ever been falsely accused by someone you loved. And click hype before we continue, because this story is only getting started. After that dinner, my daughter repeated the accusation to more relatives, cousins, aunts, family friends. She said it like it was established fact. Within 2 weeks, people who had been warm to me for years became distant and formal. I was being treated like an outsider in a family I had sacrificed for. That was when I understood the full shape of what my ex-husband had been doing. He had spent years quietly rewriting history, positioning himself as the sole provider, the one who had carried everything, while painting me as someone who had simply benefited from his effort. His story was convincing because it borrowed real events and reversed who had done the work. Nobody thought to ask for proof. At a family gathering, relatives openly dismissed my contributions. One of them made a comment so condescending it nearly knocked the breath out of me. Then, at a Sunday lunch I probably should not have attended, my daughter stood up in front of 8 relatives and announced that I should receive nothing from future family assets. "She's just after money," she said. "That's all she's ever been about." I didn't cry. I was past the point where this made me cry. I was already thinking about my folders. The betrayals came in layers. I was excluded from family financial discussions that touched on years I had been part of this family. I found out through fragments and overheard conversations. My daughter refused to hear my side and instead posted vague accusations online, where strangers with no knowledge of my life were very confident about my character. And my ex-husband kept building his narrative, consistent and practiced, until the false version of our history felt more solid than the real one. I didn't retaliate. Not once. What I did instead was begin moving carefully through my own records, because the past leaves paperwork. And I started noticing the holes in his story, dates that didn't match, figures that contradicted what I remembered. He had told people he covered the mortgage alone during one difficult year. I knew that wasn't true because I had made those payments myself, from an account with receipts attached to every transaction. I said it quietly to myself one evening at my kitchen table, surrounded by folders I had pulled from boxes. What they didn't know was, I had years of records they had completely forgotten about. Emails, bank statements, loan agreements with his signature and my account number. They thought the past was too far gone to matter. They were wrong. The woman who helped me prepare was an experienced attorney I had worked with professionally for years. She didn't offer me sympathy first. She asked me what I could prove. We organized everything over several evenings, sorting what was solid from what was circumstantial. "Let the facts do the talking," she told me. "Present them without flinching." While we worked, the family was planning a large anniversary party. My ex-husband was said to be in excellent spirits. I kept organizing. The party was held on a Saturday evening. The room smelled of roses and warm catered bread. Round tables, white cloths, a stage at the front. My attorney and I sat toward the side. My ex-husband gave a polished speech, humble and practiced, in which he described himself as the family's foundation and implied, without using my name, that someone had benefited from that foundation without contributing to it. Several relatives nodded. My daughter watched him with an expression that looked like pride. When the applause settled, I stood up and calmly asked to share a few documents. The first was a bank statement from a year he had described as one he had handled entirely alone. It showed consistent payments from my account. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. My name on every transaction. The second set were his emails to me across several years, in which he asked to borrow money. Specific amounts. Specific dates. His own words asking for financial help that I had provided. The third set showed who had maintained payments during the 2 hardest years he had described. Clean records. Verifiable account numbers. Nothing dramatic. Just the truth in paper form. The room shifted. Relatives began leaning toward each other, asking questions. Documents passed from hand to hand. My ex-husband's composure cracked at the edges. His own cousin asked him directly to explain the emails. Another asked about the bank records. He called the documents misleading. He said context was missing. But context is something you provide before the evidence arrives, not after. The room had already moved on. Under sustained, quiet pressure from people who had trusted him and were now holding proof that contradicted him, he admitted it. Not completely, but he acknowledged he had exaggerated, that he had left out important details. The full picture, he admitted, was not what he had described. My daughter crossed the room and stood in front of me. The whole gathering was watching. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Her voice broke. I held her and I meant it. And then I told her gently that trust is rebuilt through actions, not just remorse. We would have to work at it honestly. She understood. My ex-husband left that evening with something he couldn't recover. His credibility. Relatives remained polite because families do that. But the warmth was different. I could see it clearly. As for me, I stopped needing their validation. What I had wanted was simple. I wanted the truth to be heard. And it finally was. Truth is patient in a way that people who rely on lies cannot afford to be. They have to keep managing the story, keep filling the gaps, keep making sure the right people never compare notes. The truth just has to wait. And it will find its voice. It always does. Have you ever been falsely accused of caring only about money when your real sacrifice went unnoticed? Drop your story in the comments. Subscribe if you've ever had to stand quietly inside a false narrative and wait for the facts to surface. Click hype to help this story reach someone who needs it. If this hit close to home, like the video and share your thoughts below. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for being part of this community.